Okay, welcome everyone to another night in the weekly Parsha. And we have a double Parsha this week of BEHAR-BECHUKOSAI. And I'm going to focus in on BECHUKOSAI, the second Parsha, which has the very foreboding klalos, the curses that HaKadosh Baruch Hu threatens on Klal Yisrael if we don't behave ourselves. But I don't really want to focus on the klalos. I don't want to focus on the curses. There's enough challenges and difficulties in the world. There's enough uncertainty and darkness that we all see around us, and just open the news for 2 seconds and you see what's going on around the world. So I'd like to focus on the nechama, the consolation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu offers to Klal Yisrael at the very end of the Teichacha, at the very end of the grave rebuke that He gives to our nation. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says over the following words, and this is in Pasuk Mem Dalid 44, even when you are in the land of your enemies, Loi ma'astim, I have not been revolted by you, v'loi ga'altim l'chaloisam, and I have not rejected you to obliterate and destroy you, la'hafa brisi itam, to destroy the bris, the covenant that I made with you, ki ani Hashem Elokeichem, I am Hashem, their God. Says the Torah, it's going to not look very good, and Klal Yisrael is going to go through suffering, and it's going to be a lot of hardships that are going to go on. But I want you to know one thing. Despite the fact that you've been exiled from Eretz Yisrael, and you ended up in foreign lands, and you're being run over by the enemies and the like, I want you to know that it doesn't mean that I rejected you, and it doesn't mean that I'm revolted by you, and it doesn't mean that I've come to nullify the covenant, the bris, that I made with your forefathers. I'm going to recall the earlier covenant that I made. I took you out of Mitzrayim amongst the eyes of the nations. I did this all that I should be a God for you. Ani Hashem, I am the Rabbi Shalom. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says very clearly at the end of the long rebuke, which is going to create an exile of Klal Yisrael. The Beis HaMikdash is going to be destroyed. The Jewish people are going to go into a long galus for at least 70 years in Bavel, come back, and then there'll be another destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, and now 2,000 years we're wandering around. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you might think I gave up on you. You might think that I'm no longer watching you. You might think that I am so revolted by the way in which you are behaving that I left you on your own and you're out in those foreign lands all by yourself. Says the Rabbi Shalom, I want you to know that Galus itself does not mean that I'm getting rid of you. It doesn't mean that I nullify the bris, the covenant between you and I. On the other hand, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I never want you to forget, I remember the bris, Ani Hashem, I am the Rabbi Shalom, I am your God, I'm with you every single step of the way. There's a very famous Meshech Chochmah on these psukim over here. It's quite lengthy and long. I don't think that we have the luxury of going through word by word the insights and the beautiful way in which he describes everything. However, we'll try to explain at least the main points that the Meshech Chochmah is saying, because the way that he understands this statement of HaKadosh Baruch Hu explains the entire exile of Galus that we've been in for thousands of years. It explains the mission of the Jew when they are there in the Galus, in the exile. And it gives us some insight into what HaKadosh Baruch Hu really desires and what He wants from us, and the way that He runs all the different moving parts of our nation for these thousands of years. And the Meshech Chochmah basically says the following idea, and that is like this. There has never been a nation in the history of the world that has gone through what Klal Yisrael has endured and continue to survive over and over and over again. as he writes, says the Meshech Chochmah, Ze levad gam kein moifes nifla v'godol akim ha'uma. This is a tremendous wonder. It's a pele. It's unbelievable, says the Meshech Chochmah, that this nation, Klal Yisrael, has been able to survive as long as we survive in the long and the arduous galus of our lives. From country to country, from continent to continent, from nation to nation, we go. Things seem to work out. We end up getting oppressed. We get kicked out and moved someplace else. And all of this, says the Meshech Chochmah, is all part of our survival that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has planned for our nation. And he explains the following idea. What happens when Klal Yisrael goes into Galus? What happens when they end up in an exile? When they end up in a land that is not theirs? When they end up amongst a nation that doesn't love them so much? So do you know what Klal Yisrael does? That's where they thrive. When the Jewish people are kicked out of their homeland and they end up someplace in Rome, or they end up in Bavel, or they end up even in America, or they end up in Europe, or they end up in Hungary, wherever they might be, the nature of the Jew is that when they are in that land, they keep to themselves and they begin to, what we would call in Yiddish, wachs eis. They work very, very hard at becoming the greatest Jew that they possibly could. Because they realize the country, not so nice to us. The nations of the world, it's not what we're supposed to be like. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was obviously not happy with us in the last place that we were, so let's try to behave ourselves and improve ourselves. So what do? They make themselves the best of the Jewish people that they possibly can be. And he says, Chochmah Torah flourishes under those circumstances. The yeshivas grow, the schools are overpopulated, stores are opening up, and there's chadarim for little children, Beis Yaakov for the girls, there's kosher neighborhoods, there's religious neighborhoods, maybe there'll be the shtetl, they'll be enclosed, but everywhere that you look when the Jews are in the foreign land, you'll see that they are improving, and they are growing, and they are prospering in their Yiddishkeit. It's an amazing phenomenon, says the Meshech Chochmah. It's one of the reasons that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent us into the Golus. He wants us to improve ourselves. He wants us to become the nation that we're supposed to become. And so He sends us far away, so that when we are far away, we'll remember who we truly are. We'll band together as one, and we'll become a nation that we are proud to be part of the Jewish people, and Hashem has a lot of nachas from us. Says the Meshech Chochmah, but there's always a double-edged sword in this setup. And that is, as the Jewish people find themselves producing and progressing and doing amazing and thriving and growing, and the Jewish religion is prospering in that far-off nation. So what ends up happening to the Jew when they are living there and the nations are leaving them alone and they're doing the good thing? He says they start becoming very comfortable in the land that they are in. Now, to be comfortable in the land that you're in is not necessarily a bad thing, unless it changes the way that you look at yourself as a Jew. And here the Meshech Chochmah says that's exactly what happens over time. As the Jews that were so serious, and they were so stark, and they were so dedicated to the plan of what it means to be a member of Klal Yisrael, and they're flourishing, and they're growing, and they're producing all these amazing things in the world of the wisdom of the Torah and the growth of Torah, as we start getting comfortable and complacent in the land that we are in, so then the Jew begins to forget what it means to be a Jew. Says the Meshech Chochmah, at that moment, slowly but surely and sometimes rapidly, they begin to make the plunge into the assimilation that is going to happen in that particular land. They take on some of the attributes or the culture of the people that they are around. They perhaps change their dress mode a little bit amongst the people that they are around. They begin looking for things to do that the country that they are part of is promoting and says, this is the way to live your life. And slowly but surely, says the Meshech Chochmah, that strong, powerful nation of Torah, they begin to fall out of their sync, and they fall out of the loop of what it means to be living a life of real Yiddishkeit, of Judaism. So what should HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? Should He just let us wallow away in our assimilation? Should HaKadosh Baruch Hu just allow us to just keep going and doing the things that everybody else is doing and make it seem like it's okay? Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way the Meshech Chochmah learns these verses, I want you to know that when I send you into Galus, when I send you into exile, don't think it's because I'm rejecting you. Don't think it's because I'm repulsed by you. Don't think it's because I am nullifying the covenant that we made thousands of years ago. Rather, he says, look at it in the other way. The reason that I'm sending you into another exile right now, and to another nation, and you're going to have to start all over again, is because since that you fell into the trap of assimilation in this country, now I'm going to send you to a new place. You're going to start all over from scratch, and you're going to remember what it means to be a member of Klal Yisrael, and then you're going to rebuild and rejuvenate Klal Yisrael and our Torah and our mitzvahs, and you're going to be strong once again as the nation that you're supposed to be. Says the Meshech Chochmah, when the Rebbeinu Shem sends us out into the Galus, that itself is to actually protect us and allow our survival. And that's why he says over here, perhaps the greatest miracle nation in the world is Klal Yisrael, a nation that has gone from continent to continent in the four corners of the world, still is around to survive. It looks like we should have been destroyed 1,000 times already, but actually going into the Galus, that is the secret to our survival. When we get too comfortable and too complacent, that is the destruction of the Jewish people. When we're a little bit uncomfortable and we're not yet settled into the land where we are, and we don't know exactly how the people of that nation feel about us, so then we keep to ourselves and we strive to make our nation grow and flourish in wisdom, in Torah, in mitzvahs, in people, in our nation. And says the Meshech Chochmah, this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us after the end of the admonition that He gives us in the Torah this week. You could finish reading all of these psukim, and you could see how devastating it's going to be. How much HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to attack us, how the rains are going to be cut off, children are going to die, mothers are going to eat their children, Rahman al-Islam, how the nation will come chasing after us. You'll hear the rustling of a leaf in the distance, and you'll get scared, you'll think it's a soldier coming with a sword, and you'll run for your life. It's going to be total chaos. And then we're going to get kicked out of our land. Because Eretz Yisrael cannot be saved, cannot handle when there's so much sin and that is going on over there. So now we're finished. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what do you want from us? Our nation is destroyed. Hashem says, no. Let me give you some words of consolation. Don't think that when I send you away, it means that I'm getting rid of you. And don't think that when I send you to a far-off nation, it means that I'm nullifying the bris, the covenant I made. It's because that I'm upholding the covenant, and it's because that I want to make sure that you remain great, and it's because that I love you so much, and I never got rid of you. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. A parent who loves their child doesn't always smother them with love. Because when that child is misbehaving and that child is out of control, they are the wilde chaya, the wild kid, as we would say, and they are they're acting with chutzpah, and they don't listen, and they're driving you crazy, and they're hanging from the chandelier, even though you told them already to stop hanging from the chandelier. Once I had one of our kids, he used to like to hang on things. And he decided he's going to hang on the garage door. So, okay, you hang on the garage door, you break the garage door. So he thought he's going to get away with it. We said, nice try. You broke the door, you're going to pay for it. I don't have any money. Okay, well, you'll find a way to get the money to pay for that garage door. Because if you misbehave, there has to be a consequence. And the consequence is to discipline the child so that they should improve their ways. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when the Jewish people misbehave, what is misbehaving? Assimilation. What is assimilation? When I forget how special it is to be a Jew, and I want to be like the people in the nation that I'm living around. When you begin to do that, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, comes along discipline. I still love you. I love you very, very much, says Hashem. But if I would not discipline you right now, that would not be love. That would be achzoris, that would be cruelty. A parent that will never discipline their child, and they can get away with anything that they want, that's not a sign of love. That's a sign of cruelty. They say the famous mashal, there's a kid who's playing with the ball on the sidewalk, and he keeps throwing it into the street. And he runs, he's not looking where he's going, he runs in the street, and the car slams on the brakes, and the driver starts screaming, wow, you little kid, I want to watch where you're going. And that kid says like this, and he grabs the ball and he goes back to the side of the street. The kid's playing with the ball once again, and lo and behold, the ball falls in the middle of the street, and the kid runs once again, he's not paying attention, and a car comes along, screeching, almost as the kid, he starts yelling, you rotten little kid, you run in the middle of the street, you're not paying any attention. And the car drives off. And now the kid does it a third time. And the ball rolls into the street, and the car comes zooming down. And this time the car screeches to a halt right next to the kid. And the driver gets out of the car, and he holds the kid and he says, what are you doing? I could have run over you. You have to be careful and watch your life. The Nimshal says the mashal of that story is, the two first people that drove through, they're just people driving through. The third one who got out of the car, who bent down and looked at the kid in the eyes and told them, you have to be careful what you're doing, that one's the father. Because a father who loves his child, a father who cares about his child, a father who wants the best for his child, he knows as much as you love, part of the love is the discipline. Says the Meshech Chochmah. Hashem is telling us in this week's Parsha, after all the devastation, all the destruction, after everything, you should know the reason I'm sending you into exile, and it will happen many times throughout our history, is because I love you, and I want to uphold the bris, the covenant that I made with your forefathers, and the only way in which I can possibly do that is if I make the Jewish people great once again. And the only way that's going to happen is if I pick you up from this nation that you will become so comfortable and assimilated in, and I take you somewhere else where you'll start all over again from scratch. Many years ago, I went to a museum in Eretz Yisrael called the Diaspora Museum. Don't remember where it is, Tel Aviv or something, yeah? Diaspora Museum. And they made a museum that showcases the Jews in the diaspora. What is diaspora? That means outside the land of Israel. And it like highlights maybe 1,500 years of the life of the Jewish people after the time of the destruction of the Second Temple. And they show a similar story in every single land. We travel along, now this museum, by the way, is like anti-religious to you can't even imagine, to the maximum degree. At the end of the museum, there's like what's called a Hall of Fame, or the Wall of Heroes. The heroes of the Jewish people are Mark Spitz in his Speedos with 4 gold medals around his neck, and Herzl, who tried to convince the Jewish people that you don't need the land of Israel to be a nation. And there were, I think, a few movie stars on there and a few other heretical people. Those are the heroes of the Jewish people. Not Moshe Rabbeinu, not Avraham Avinu, not Rabbi Akiva, not the Horowitz, not the Baba Sali. No, they didn't make the cut of the heroes of Klal Yisrael. So this museum is anti-religious. So they're coming from a not religious perspective. But they do us a very great service because they show like this. The Jews come in and they settle down, let's say North Africa, wherever they settle down first. And they're thriving and they're prospering religiously. The museum points that out. Religiously. They have their yeshivas, they have their schools, they have their neighborhoods, they have their stores. The Jewish people are marrying each other. Everything is looking great. And then they say it's like dioramas, they have all these different places. And then we cannot explain, after 200 years of prosperity, 200 years of pleasantness, 200 years of living together nicely with the nation that they were a part of, suddenly, we don't understand, the nation turned on the Jewish people. Pogroms, they pillaged them, a Holocaust, inquisitions, you name it, and they threw them out of the land, and the Jews go now to another country. And the same story repeats itself again and again and again. We start off in a shtetl. We start off by ourselves. We start off growing in wisdom and Torah in our nation and our religion. Then at a certain point we begin to get a little bit comfortable. Doctors, lawyers, we start assimilating into the culture and bang, they come and they turn on us like that. At the end of the museum, they have no answer. How did it work? That's what happens to the Jewish people. There's no other nation in the world that happens to. Says the Meshech Chochmah, this is the nace of our existence. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does it for a reason. Because it's only through that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is able to retain the Jewish people for who we are. If He allows us to slip too much, and the assimilation becomes rampant to the point that there's no return, so then HaKadosh Baruch Hu, He loses us. We're going to fall into the nation, intermarrying. All of our kids will not be Jewish. You know, Moses Mendelssohn was like the father of Reform Judaism. So they've done studies of his offspring. And they have found that he has not a single Jewish descendant left to his name. The man that wanted to reform Judaism, he wanted to change things around, he became a little bit, I guess you'll call him in today's world, he was very much out of the box. In the beginning, he was a pretty religious person, but then he became very out of the box. And when you're like that, so things go astray. And then the followers ended up creating Reform Judaism, and his children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, they all married out. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I can't let everybody become a Mendelssohn family. I can't let everybody fall into that category. So I'm going to ship you off to another continent. I'll ship you off to another nation, and you'll redevelop and build yourself, and you'll be Jewish once again. And you'll be strong. And you'll be yeshivas. And everything will be amazing. Now the Meshech Chochmah writes very scary words in this piece. The Meshech Chochmah was published in the year 1927. And it was about 2 years after he passed away. So he left over all of his writings. And afterwards they put them all together and they published the Meshech Chochmah, which is his Perush, his commentary on the Chumash. So this was published in the year 1927. He probably penned these words somewhere around 1924, 1925. Now at that time in the world, there was a country called Germany, and there was a city called Berlin. If I'm not mistaken, Berlin is the capital of Germany. And the Jewish people at this time, the 1920s, they were getting very, very comfortable in Berlin, extremely comfortable. And the assimilation was out of control at that point. And they were mixing in, intermingling with the society very well. There was intermarriage that was going on. They were becoming high up officials in the government and in medicine and in banking, all different things. Doctors, lawyers, you name it. That's what they were doing. Says the Meshech Chochmah, when Yachshav ki Berlin hi Yerushalayim, when you think that Berlin became Yerushalayim, became Jerusalem, says the Meshech Chochmah, you're in very big trouble. And at that point, says the Meshech Chochmah, you have to know that the Jewish people, they lose themselves in that country. When they think that everything is amazing, everything is great, so then there's no turning back. This is 1920, let's say 1925. The World War II did not begin until 1938? What? 1941. Till 1941. No? Earlier. 1938? Yeah. Till 1938. That means that the Meshech Chochmah was able to understand, based on the Torah itself, that since that the Jewish people have made themselves so comfortable in the land of Germany, that they were saying such words that the Berlin is the Jerusalem of Germany, he knew that's the beginning of the end. And he knew that whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises in the Torah, it's going to come true over there as well. Now, the chiddush that the Meshech Chochmah is saying is, it's not that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is angry. It's not that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revolted by us. It's not that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is nullifying his covenant that he has with us, but rather this is the only way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can save us and make sure that our nation will continue. Because if there wouldn't be upheavals in all of these lands, and there wouldn't be the pogroms, and there wouldn't be the inquisitions where we got kicked out of Spain and we ended up going to other places like Amsterdam and the like. If it wouldn't be Rahman al-Islam lo aleinu for something like the Holocaust, which shook up the Jewish world in a way that we've never been shaken up before, and we migrated from Europe, we ended up in England, we ended up in Europe, we ended up in different places in Europe, we ended up in America, we ended up in South America, we ended up in Australia, we ended up all over the world. And all over the world, the Jewish people rebuilt themselves. The Torah right now is bigger maybe than it ever has been in history, with maybe 1 million frum Jews in the world, and there's so many that are sitting and learning Torah, and the yeshivas are gigantic, they're bursting in Lakewood, in Yerushalayim, they're humongous, the yeshivas, never this big before. That's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan. Because until he takes us out of the source of our assimilation, so then we cannot escape the quicksand of assimilation that is there. It's only when he removes us, and he removes us, unfortunately, through pain and suffering, but it wakes us up so that when we relocate ourselves and our nation, we begin to think to ourselves, well, we better remain Jewish over here, because over there they didn't like us when we weren't so Jewish. We better make sure that we stay Jews, and that's how we rebuild again and again. Which means, of course, that, and the Meshech Chochmah says, it usually takes about 200 years for the Jewish people in that country where they are to become a full assimilation, and then these things end up happening. So, if I'm not mistaken, America is getting ready to celebrate their 250th year of existence. The Jewish people have been here for a very, very long time. And it's true, on one hand, the amount of Torah and the amount of Yiddishkeit and of growth is enormous. Almost like every state that you go to in America, somewhere there is a Jewish community. Somewhere there is a mikveh, there is a school, there is a shul somewhere. Look at the streets of Tarzana today. Just about a month or so ago, I was walking back from shul Shabbos morning with my son. We're walking up the street, and he says, "Tati, turn around." And I turn around and I look, and the whole street is filled with people that are keeping Shabbos walking up the street. I'm here for how long? I don't know, 18, 19 years already? It didn't look like this 18 or 19 years ago. The amount of Torah, the amount of shuls that are on the streets, the amount of the schools and mikvahs and stores and restaurants. We're even getting a sushi restaurant down the street over here. It's unbelievable what's going on in this town. Getting everything. So on one hand, it's a great sign of our spiritual success. It's a great sign of our growth in Torah. It's an amazing sign of how much we've accomplished in the many years since that we've been in America, and the years that the Jews came to California and Los Angeles and started spreading out farther and farther and farther, deeper into the valley. It's amazing, really amazing. At the same time, the assimilation rate in America, they project right now, is approximately 75 to 80%. That means, in intermarriage terms, 7 to 8 of every Jew in America is intermarried. Now, intermarried, they might tell you, no, I'm Jewish. Yeah, but that's because the Reformed and the Conservative have decided who's a Jew and who's not a Jew. And basically, everyone's a Jew. You like bagels and lox? You're a Jew, no problem. You like latkes on Hanukkah? You're a Jew. It's fantastic. Do you like to shake a lulav and an esrog on the sukkahs? You don't? No problem. It's okay. As long as you eat challah, you're a Jew. That's all that counts. So you have a lot of people that are not really Jewish, that are posing as Jews, and they're becoming part of the Jewish nation, and therefore the assimilation is very, very high. On one hand, lots of Torah. On the other hand, lots of assimilation. So what are we going to do? Says the Meshech Chochmah, just keep your eyes open. That's what it means over here. Because whenever we get too comfortable, I saw that just yesterday in Manhattan, pretty Jewish place, Manhattan. In Manhattan, of all places, there's a massive synagogue there. I think it was the Lincoln Square Synagogue. It's like one of the biggest shuls in all of Manhattan. They were having some kind of a gathering of the Jewish people that were interested in making aliyah and buying property in Israel. And there was a pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel protest that took place outside. And they were shouting anti-Semitic remarks and comments. They were getting into fights with the police and with the Jews that were there. And that's the streets of Manhattan. And that's from people. So that means the Meshech Chochmah is telling us, you have to be careful. Whenever the assimilation gets too much, whenever the Jewish people get too complacent, whenever too comfortable where we are, so the world begins to shake a little bit, and we have to be careful. Chas v'chalil, we're not saying that anything bad is going to happen. And in the world of Torah, we have to keep doing and doing and doing and progressing as best as we possibly can. But, in the words of the Meshech Chochmah, we just have to keep our eyes open and see. The Jews in Germany never ever believed that the Germans would do what they do. The Jews in Spain never ever believed that the Spaniards would do what they did in the Inquisition. The Jews that were living in North Africa, they never believed there would be such a thing called the Crusades, and that the Christians would do what they did. Never believed such a thing. Impossible. If you had no way, it can't be. But they did. They did. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I can't leave you there. Because if I leave you there, you're gone. Assimilation, there won't be any Jews that are left. They have this one Pew study, I think that was called. Pew study. Will your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren, will they be Jewish in America? And the study shows, it's got like all these pictures of people, it shows that in every single generation, the attrition rate, I think that's what we call it, the attrition rate of the Jews is getting less and less and less and less, that by the year 2050, I think that's what they determine, there will barely be any like Jews almost that are left, because the assimilation is so great. So again, I said we're not going to speak about bad things. We're going to speak only about good things. Okay? And that is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, and that's why the Meshech Chochmah is describing it over here tonight, that don't think that the Golus is a bad thing. And don't think that when we go into another nation, because Hashem wants to reject us and He's revolted, He's getting rid of us. No, says Hashem, I love you so much, I want to hold on to you so badly, it's the only way that I can keep you. By sending you over here, and you having to reboot, and restart, and recalibrate, and restructure yourself, and in that way you become this amazing nation, as the Meshech Chochmah says, that we are the ba'ofen nifla asher lo yishar machshavas ha'adam maskil. We have survived in such a wondrous way. No mind of seichel, of no logical mind, can even understand our existence. What looks like the worst thing, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's really the best thing for the Jewish people, because that's how, in a miraculous way, I keep you alive and going. I want to leave you with a story. I saw this Maisa many years ago. I think it was maybe I want to say it's like the 1980s that this story took place. In Hungary, which was the last place where the Holocaust, where the Nazis came and attacked, and their mission was to wipe out all of Hungarian Jewry, and there was about 1 million Hungarian Jews. In the first few months, they wiped out about 750,000 Jews. Whoever survived from Hungary, it's a mace nigla, it's an open miracle that they survived, because the Nazis went on a rampage. They knew it was the end of the war was coming, and they wanted to do everything they could, and they wanted to wipe out every single last Jew in Hungary. Whoever survived, it's beyond a miracle. And some of the families, after the war was over, they stayed in Hungary. They actually stayed there. Which you think to yourself, this is like the hotbed of anti-Semitism, this is where you watched your family get killed, but they stayed there, and they rebuilt their lives in Hungary. Now, they were not religious. The people that survived and stayed in Hungary were not really religious. But they were raising their children, and they were in Hungarian quarters and everything, but not religious. So they came up with this idea between the Hungarian, like Vad HaRabbanim, the group of Rabbanim, and some of the great leaders in Eretz Yisrael, that they should start a school in Hungary that will be a religious school, and the Jewish kids who have no education, don't know anything at all, they will be able to come and enroll in this school, and we'll teach them the subjects that they learn in secular studies, and we'll teach them Jewish studies, and this way they can begin to learn what it means to be a Jew. And they said, what an amazing idea. And so they found a few Rebbeim in Israel that were willing to relocate to the school. They would fly back and forth, once a month, whatever it might be. And they brought in teachers, and whoever was there religious in Hungary, they're part of the school. And they started putting up signs all over the kind of Jewish areas in Hungary. New school is starting. Registration is going to be on Monday, whatever the date was. Whoever is interested, let them come and register their children for this school. They expected that about 20 people are going to show up on that day. Because at this point, there's barely any Judaism going on. On the day of registration, there were literally 200 families of students waiting to register for the school. Now, they didn't have the manpower, they were understaffed, didn't have the amount of teachers, the Rabbi that was supposed to be there. They began getting on the phones, calling back and forth, and they began shipping in more teachers from Israel and from other places in Europe where there's teachers that are there. And the next thing, they're getting a bigger room and a bigger building, and they're taking care of 200 children that want to learn what it means to be a Jew. And as the school is beginning to fall into place, they make a meeting for all the parents to inspire the parents. If the kids are going to grow, parents should grow as well. And there's all the parents are sitting around the room, and they said to the parents, whoever would like to share their story, why it is that you're brave enough and you decided to bring your child to this school, please, feel free to speak. So one parent raised their hand, says, my kid is in public school over here. I don't like the values. I don't like the morals. I know that the Bible is a much more moral thing. I want my kids to be in this school. Says, I'm not religious. Another guy says, I'm not religious, but I want my children to marry a Jew. But if I keep them in the public school system or the private school system, they're going to be always with the Hungarians. I want them to meet Jews, so I came to this school. And one by one, people are going around the room and they're saying their thing, and all basic, the same reasons. There's one man that's sitting in the corner, and he's like very, very deep in thought, very pensive. And so the rabbi that's leading this meeting, he says, Rabbi Yid, you look like you have something to say. You have a story you want to share with us? And the man's like very quiet at first, doesn't say anything. He says, it's okay. He says, it looks like you have something to tell us. You have a story? And the man says, yes, I do. He said, at the time of the Holocaust, I was a young boy, maybe about 6, 7 years old. My parents, not religious at all. As a matter of fact, even our skin coloring and our hair coloring, we didn't even really look so Jewish. And we heard the news that the Nazis are coming to town, and they're looking for every single last Jew. Now, our house was not Jewish. It didn't look Jewish. We don't have a mezuzah on the door, nothing. We don't know anything about Judaism, don't go to school, nothing. And one night, I hear my father and my mother in one of the rooms, and they are arguing with each other. And my father's saying, we need to get rid of everything in this house that looks Jewish. And my mother says, what are you worrying about? We don't look Jewish, we don't sound Jewish, we don't act Jewish, we don't go to temple, we don't go here, we have nothing Jewish about us. And the father says, you don't understand, the Nazis, they're animals. They're going to smell one thing about Judaism here, they could kill us all. And the mother says, there's nothing here. There's nothing here. I don't have candlesticks to light on Friday night. I don't have, we don't have any svarim, any books. We don't have even kippahs. We have nothing here. What are you worrying about? And the boy says he hears his parents fighting. And he's looking through the keyhole to see what's going on in that room. And there is a fire. It was like a living room area. There was a fire in the fireplace. And the father's looking around the room. And he says, oh, that. And he walks over to the bookshelf. And he pulls a siddur off the bookshelf. And the mother says, no, not that. That's all that I have left of my grandmother. That's the last thing that I have to remind myself of my grandmother and my mother and my family. Please, not that. And the father said, but you said we have nothing in this house that shows that we're Jewish. We have to get rid of everything. She says, please, she says, I beg you. It's all that I have left in my family heirloom. The only thing I have left, please. And the father says, we can't have a trace of anything. And I'm watching through the keyhole. I'm only 6 years old. And I see my father open up the siddur and look like this. And I see him walking over towards the fireplace. And in my heart of hearts, I started screaming, no! Don't do it, please, don't do it! And my mother's watching him, and she's crying, and my father walks over to the fireplace, and he takes the siddur, and he says, whew, and he throws it into the fire, and the pages go up in flames, and he says, now, there's no remembrance of anything Jewish in our house at all. Now we'll be safe. I was only 6 years old, says this man. I wasn't religious, I didn't know anything about Judaism. But I knew at that moment, you don't throw a siddur into the fire. The war came, the Nazis came, they killed out everybody. Miracle, I survived. And I told myself that I survived. If there's ever a way that I can get that siddur back, if there's ever a way that I could ever reconnect myself with Judaism, I'll have to find the way to do it. And when I saw the sign that was up, that you're starting a school for Jewish children to teach them what it means to be Jewish, I said, this is the way that I will rectify the mistake that my father made. And instead of throwing a siddur into the fire, I'm going to get a siddur and give it to my children and teach them how to pray and teach them what it means to be a Jew. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you think Galus is because I detest you? You think when I send you off to another nation, it's because I'm revolted by you? You think when there's troubles amongst the Jewish people, it's because I'm mefer brisai, that I'm nullifying the covenant that I made with your holy forefathers? No, says Hashem, you don't understand. It's for one reason and one reason only. When I do all those things, that's the way that the miracle of Klal Yisrael continues. How does it continue? Because now that I uprooted you from one place and I drive you away to another country, when you get to that country, you're going to work very, very, very hard to flourish and to grow in your Yiddishkeit and your Judaism. Torah will flourish, mitzvahs will grow, everything will grow. And then you'll come back to what it means to be part of Klal Yisrael, of that Jewish nation. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu should protect us all. He should watch over all of us. We should never say that Tarzana is the Jerusalem of California. We should never say that California is the Eretz Yisrael of America. We should never say that Borough Park and Lakewood and Brooklyn is the Yerushalayim of the East Coast. Never, Chalila, never ever say such a thing. It's temporary. These are temporary stopping points. You know, it's like when you're on a road trip and it's a long, long ride. And every few hours you got to just stop the car, stretch your legs, take care of things, but you got to get back in the car because you got to keep moving to your destination. Every place that we go in the Gullus and the exile is part of the road trip. And sometimes we stop in North America, sometimes we stop in South America, sometimes we stop in Hungary, sometimes we stop in Europe, and those are just stops, are just stretching our legs. But we got to get back in the car and keep going on the road trip to get to the ultimate mile, the ultimate destination, which Be'ez Hashem, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I will eventually bring you back. And I'll bring you back to Yerushalayim HaKodesh. And I'll bring you back to a Beis HaMikdash. I'll bring you back to where you want, where you belong. And with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's help, Hashem should take us back in the schus of the endurance and the miraculous survival and the existence of Klal Yisrael. We should be zeicha to the ultimate being brought home to Yerushalayim, the real Yerushalayim HaKodesh, b'mheira v'yameinu.